Hi, you've reached another video from Shopsmith Troubleshooting and Tips. You can join the discussion by following us on our Facebook group page, and of course, please subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Thanks.
Finished cutting all of our pieces on the Ringmaster, and now we've lined all the dots. If you want to come in and show them, we've lined all the dots to prepare it for sanding, which we will do now. Grit for our first pass.
Fill it with the cyanoacrylate. It's a medium viscosity, and then we sprayed it real quick with the quick fast, and it's ready to sand almost.
So we're going to sand again. Haven't gotten to the center yet, the inside.
Yeah, we still got to do the inside, but the outside's going to be good here. Now we're just turning it.
Easier to work over here.
Yeah. And there we go. You can see that the glue is pretty well filled in all the. There's another. Oh well, we haven't even glued that yet, so we'll deal with that later. But if you look at all these, this is all filled in. Like I said, this piece here is going to come off. Why don't you show them, Dan? All right. See, that comes right off. And so then what will be, that'll make it so that we can cut the bowl to do our wrap.
Yeah, like that over here. I'll come over now. What do you think?
It's round. Looks like one of those things you put on a dog to keep him from eating his butt or something. You know, like a comb.
Yeah. When he gets operated on, they put this on, not from him eating his butt.
Well, so we finally gotten to the point where the actual cutting is going to be involved, and this is our cherry bowl that we've made. And what I'm doing here is before I do anything, I just want to get a look at the bowl, look at the wood, and kind of decide where I'm going to make my cut. So if you see here, there's some pretty interesting grain going on in here, so I wouldn't want to cut that. Right here looks pretty interesting. Over here, so I'm thinking that right in this area, this looks pretty plain right in here, and I'm gonna go ahead and let this be where I'm gonna go ahead and make my cut. So I'm just gonna make a little mark up here on the top. That'll be hidden eventually, and I'm gonna take this gauge, this angle gauge. I'm just going to set it right over the top of that mark. And I'm just going to make another mark down towards the bottom. Just real faint. I'm just using a pencil here. Okay. So now I've got kind of a vertical reference line. I went out to the auto parts store and I picked up a roll of this inexpensive pinstripe. I'm gonna try using this to do the layout. I'm just going to use this to lay out a vertical reference. Okay, so I've just gone ahead and marked that with the tape, and that's all this is just giving me a vertical reference that I can refer to as I lay out my my curve with the rest of the tape. Alright, so I've got my vertical mark here. I'm also going to line my piece back up, the bottom component. I'm going to line that back up with my reference mark that I had made earlier. So I have a reference mark here and I have a reference mark here. I'm going to line those two back up, and I'm just going to put some, this is just regular masking tape. And I'm going to use this to hold the pieces together while I work. I'm just going to hold that on there like that. Do the same over here. I'm just trying to stay out of the way of my vertical here with the masking tape. There we go. So whatever we do, we have to incorporate the bottom into the rest of the bowl when we do the layout. Okay. So I'm going to take my black pinstripe tape and I'm just going to lay out kind of an interesting curve. And use that as essentially a cutting line for when I cut out the bowl. Okay. So here you can see I've got my center line and I've just taken the tape, I've laid out kind of an interesting curve, and that's where I'm going to go ahead and cut the bowl. It's a little bit of a stressful moment because this is actually a perfect bowl and I'm going to go and cut into it. So we always take risks when we do this. This could go south on us and it could just fall apart, or it could turn into something actually quite amazing. But before I do that, there's one other thing I want to do. I want to take a look at the fasteners that I have available to hold the bowl once it's ready. I went and got my fasteners. These are the fasteners that I'm going to use. They're little brass screws that have backs on them as well. That essentially they're used in leather work to make like belts, and what happens is that you get the two pieces and they screw together. This is going to be used to pull the two halves together tightly when we go ahead and put the bowl back together. And so it's important to consider those as well as we do the layout, to see how this is gonna lay out for the fittings as well. What I'm going to do is just lay those out with a pencil, kind of freehand where those are going to be. And I think what I'd like to do is have, this is just your own feeling about how things look, and your sort of there's no right or wrong way to do this, obviously. I mean, any sane person would say that this is done and not cut the bowl apart and do all this, but just use your own judgment here. Okay, so now I've got my curve and I've got my little dots, and that's where the little fasteners are going to go through. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill those they don't require much of a hole. This is like, looks like it's about 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to make it slightly bigger than it needs to be so I have a little bit of flexibility. But I'm going to go ahead and cut those real quick. Much better. So we have our first hole. Make the second hole. Third hole. Okay, you get the picture there. So now I've got my layout line and I've got my attachment point for my rivets. Now the next step is the scary part, and that is we're going to start cutting. So to do that, I do need to take the bottom off, and I'm just going to cut this with a razor blade. And I'm also going to make a mark on here so that when I go to kind of carve out the bottom, see, I've made a mark right here, and that's just so that I'm going to take this bottom off. I'm going to cut the pinstripe right there, and I want to know which side of the line to work on, and I'm just made a mark to show me that. Just like that. Take the tape off and remove the bottom. We'll set that aside for now. Okay, now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take a saw and we're gonna cut right down that pathway right around there. Okay. So here comes the moment of the truth, guys. This is where it gets a little hairy. You've got to be very careful. Just move slowly and be patient. Okay, here we go.
Start with a straight cut. And then an angle. Follow my line. Turn my blade.
Some 150 grit sandpaper here. I'll start off with that. I think I am going to try using this little wheel. Just on this part right here. Actually, this works pretty good, this little wheel. To help keep that one spot nice and flat. And there's the wrap with the studs, and now we can glue the bottom on. Okay, now I've got the bottom in the vise, and I'm going to use this Japanese saw to cut a mark right on that edge, just like that. There's the tape. I cut it just on that side, and then I'm going to chisel up to it and remove some of that wood. Just trying to go about the thickness of the wood.
You just glued the base on.
Accelerator.
And we're going to put some accelerator on there. It's coming, rough, but it's coming. You get the shape. Just finished putting on the second coat of lacquer, and you can see the holes where the buttons will go in. I need to make the plug.